Real true education, not fake news. It's the it's May the 25th. May the 25th, 2013. It's still cold, very cold spring. There has come some rain, which is a welcome relief as it allows a bit of growth and for the fertiliser to get washed down. And so things are not so bad. Ireland is still in a lockdown for this coronavirus. I'll be doing more videos on that. I've got a good few new subscribers. I got 3 in the last few days, and I'm very thankful to have you here. And just to explain to anyone what my channel's about, well, it's to try to counter fake news and give you real news, which you can use to your advantage. And one of the problems I have is that, like in the case of those videos on the DeWalt drill, which might be very good if you're doing a project, I'd like to be able to put them just on request, put up one, because you see a lot of them and you might think the videos channel's all about that. How I handle that will take time if I'm able to do it. But this is on the EU and the recent German court case, and I'm going to try and explain that to you as best I can. So you won't see this stuff in the media. The things I'm giving you will not appear in the media. I don't know why they can't do it, but they don't. And what I'm going to do with this case is I'm going to divide it up. You're not going to be here for 28 minutes, guarantee you. Once this goes to about this 15 minutes, I'm going to stop, and then we can start again and take up the next thing. And that suits everyone. It suits my battery and it suits everyone. So again, once you go into a video and you see it's not for you, skip it, because no channel can have everything for everybody. And I have over 1,000 views on one in designing cattle sheds, and there are 3 cattle sheds already in the course of construction on that particular video. People came and measured and asked me could they do it, no problem, and they're being built. So that's useful. That doesn't mean I know everything, by any stretch of the imagination. It does not mean I know everything. But however, if you're a young person starting off, how are you going to find out? And isn't it a pity to have information in the head of someone like me that can't get out there to where it can be used? So I finally got around to the EU, and I don't think I have a 20 in the series. I've searched this morning and I can't see it anywhere. So we're going to get moving on this whole thing. Now, one of the things that I have a thing about, and you know all that, and I'm suffering from it. I couldn't sleep last night with the noise at the local wind farm, but I'm against wind energy. But people might not understand exactly why. I can't understand how some of them are surviving, or any of them, because they're all insolvent. None of them can pay their way, and their accounts show that they're not able to pay their way. So this is a mystery, not only for energy and the environment, it's a mystery for financing as well. Now, I did a video on shaky banks, and I think you probably have all have seen it. And if you haven't, give it a wee look. And just to fit in my day with this, I'm having a little cuppa here. It's about the time for a cup of tea, and if you don't mind, just take an odd cup of tea. Thank you. And so I did this one, and I pointed out that the AIB share price came down from 420 to 97. Now this was before the coronavirus emergency, if we can call it that. So if you invested this time last year in the AIB, you'd lose a lot of money. You wouldn't get a quarter of your money back. You know, and that is something that we have been looking at. And one of the traits of my trade is to try and predict these things. Not from the point of view of wishing everything to come down. I just want the renewable energy thing assessed, and as you can see from Michael Moore's film Planet of the Humans, there's very good reason why it should be properly assessed before it's implemented. However, that's an uphill struggle and it'll take a lot of time. But one of the things I dealt with in a video was this thing about pensions, and they're relevant to most people because that's what you get when you get older. So you have defined benefit and defined contribution, and I explain them. But defined benefit is where you get you're guaranteed a certain amount back after you reach retirement age, and it's the best type of pension if the company can stick it. Now, what happened is a couple of people took heed of my video, and the first thing I advise them is please go and get advice, and they got advice. Get advice. There's plenty of people around who specialise in this type of advice, and tax consultants and everything else, and they're not that dear. In one case, €150 is all it costs to make a vital decision. And funny enough, when he went up to talk to him, he says, "You're right, who told you this is the problem?" He says, "I saw it on the YouTube channel." He says, "It is a problem, there's no money there to pay these pensions," right? So what happened was, anyway, he got advice, and you can cash it. Now, by the way, this person had been asked by the company to change to a defined contribution pension, but the contract was a defined benefit. So he stuck in the heels. He says, "No, my contract with you is a defined benefit pension, and I'm not changing it." So they capitulated. They said, "All right." But then he began to wonder why they were pressurising him, and we began to look at it from a strategic point of view. And there's not much point in having a defined contribution pension, a defined benefit pension, if the company that's guaranteeing it is broke. And if the banks that's guaranteeing it are broke, and if the banks like the ECB are 21 million down in their pension fund for their own staff, how can they look after somebody else when they can't look after their own? So anyway, he began to get alarmed, and anyway, what he did was he cashed it in. And what he found out, and I wasn't fully up to speed in this, when you invest in a pension, you get tax-free on what you pay in. But when you cash in a pension, you can take out the money and you can reinvest it, and there's no tax on the first €120,000 worth. That's 120k there. 120,000 euros worth. So he bought a little thing, something valuable. It was in the way of property, real estate. We're not going any further than that. And he's very, very happy with the decision because he's getting a little rent out of it, and it's there, and you can always sell it. So it can't be touched. That's the point. It doesn't matter what collapses. That's going to be there anyway. So there's a very good idea. But my shed has been copied, and this has been copied. The downside for me is I have to be very, very careful, and I have to emphasise like that I can't be held responsible for what I say here. I'm getting nothing for this. I'm only trying to help people along and to try and bring people to change their voting patterns. That's really why I'm here. So anyway, he got advice and he cashed it in, and it seems to be so far a happy story. And the other happy story is I'm on 7 minutes, and I won't be any longer than another 7 minutes. So one of the great mysteries is how are banks getting money? And you saw in the earlier videos about bonds and the issuing of bonds. Now, if I run up to the bank to buy a new tractor for 40,000, I'm looking for money. But the way government and big corporations do it, and big companies, is they issue a bond, a piece of paper, something like this, and there's coupons on the side. So if I were doing that for the tractor, I'd issue a bond for 40,000 and I'd pay 5% a year. So if somebody throw me in 40,000, somebody invest, I buy my tractor, I go off and I try and make money with it, and I pay 5% every year of the 40,000, and at the end of it I have to pay the 40,000 back. But of course I probably wouldn't have that. I probably wouldn't have it. So what they do in reality is they roll over the bond, so that when it comes to pay one, they pay it and they take out another. And that, I know it's precarious, but what's happened recently is that bond yields, that the amount of interest in some cases has turned negative. In other words, normally if I got 40,000 from somebody to buy the tractor, I pay them 5% a year for 10 years. Now they pay me 2% a year. And that is bizarre. And nobody in the world, if the hand was put on the heart, can explain how that's going to pan out. Essentially, there's no homes for money. There is no good place to put money into. If there was, everyone would be doing it. There's no home for money, and that would indicate to me that there's too much money looking for something. Now, inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. Well, how, if you have too much money chasing a home, well, then you have something overvalued. There's something out of line in that. So how are they getting the money? Well, the answer is they're getting it from the EU investment bank for all these big pylon and wind farm projects, and they're giving it to the governments, and they're giving it to the banks of the member states, and they're throwing around them as if there were no tomorrow, and they really do believe this green crap. And I say that's going to be they're going to fall on that. They don't realise, but that's not. I'm not parking on that for the moment. So then the question is, where does the EU get its money? Well, it prints it mostly. Prints it. Now, and that then reduces the value of the money. Now, one of the things that's relevant to all this is the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. And it's Article 127 deals with this particular point, and you can get it online. There's a consolidated version of it online there. Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. There's also the Lisbon Treaty, and there's a number of other treaties there that are referred to in the judgment. Now, but the function of the ECB is stated several times. It's to maintain price stability. Price stability. And this means that they don't want prices fluctuating up and down, because it's very hard to do accounts, to audit, to do anything, if you not only have to value what you're dealing with, the product and the assets and all that, if you also have to take into account the ever-changing money supply and the ever-changing value of money, well, then you have an unbelievable dynamic. You have a problem there. How do you deal with that? And in my lifetime between 1970 and 1982, I saw wages going up over 10 times and the value of money going down over 10 times, and they just printed and printed. And countries like Italy and Spain just printed away. Not only that, there were leapfrog wage claims by unions, trade unions, and they had to get their cut. And then the way the government dealt with the public service aspect of that is they printed more. But the EU was specifically designed to stop that, to prevent that happening. And it succeeded in that in many ways. You saw the bus drivers strike there. They didn't get what they wanted. They may have got other conditions, but they didn't get what they wanted. And that's because the Irish government wouldn't have the guts to stand up to unions. But the EU is not elected, and it can do that. And that's one of the effects of a dictatorship. They can do that. They are a dictatorship. Now, not only does the treaty mention the maintaining price stability and dealing with monetary policy. How much do they print? What do they take out? How do they keep the money supply to suit the usage of the money? So if a new state comes in, they have to take back the money out of that state and print equal money in the ECB, the European Central Bank, so that they have money. If another country, and there are some of them, are using the euro as their currency, their money has to be pulled in and they have to get it out. So monetary policy is the function of the EU, and you can't just throw that to the wind. That's a job has to be done. So now the other thing, and it comes up in the treaty all the time, and it's badly written here, I'm sorry, subsidiarity and proportionality. Subsidiarity and proportionality. Each country is a subsidiary of the EU. But all decisions of the EU have to be proportional. They have to be cautious and they have to be assessed, and no rash decisions can be made, or none off the cuff, or just picked out of the top of their head. And this was a major attractor. When I supported the EU, I read this, and many governments went for this. They accepted this. Now, there is provision for exceptional circumstances, such as the coronavirus, but this thing I'm talking about was started 5 years before that, so it's not really relevant to the coronavirus. They can print emergency money, and they can lend out emergency money, right? So how are countries getting it? How are countries getting the money to keep going? Not only, you see, one of the problems with not being able to print money is you can't give wage rises. You have to keep prices stable, which is a good thing. But it ties in. It doesn't let governments have quick fixes. If you went to Italy 30 years ago, you'd be paying in thousands of lira, and other countries, Greek, they're all inflated. The value of them went way up compared with sterling and the dollar. So it put them in a sort of a straitjacket that they had to comply with, that the money had its value. And it was similar to being linked to the gold standard You had to have gold opposite it. Well, with this system, you had to keep the money supply limited. And if money's not scarce, of course, it's no use. Now, the Germans are sticklers for this because they had their people, remember, bringing the wages home in a wheelbarrow in the 1930s, hyperinflation. And they didn't want this to happen again. And they're big into their savings, and they're kind of a prudent people, conservative people, and they like the simple life and a few beers and that's it. But they don't do anything wild. Whereas the south of Europe is a bit different. So so the question then is, where are all these banks and all that getting the money? You see at the paper, we're investing 180 million here, a big wind farm off the Scottish coast, wind farms off the Irish coast, millions in this, and we're going to build this, and we're going to build that, and we're going to put cables here, we're going to do the Dublin all electric cars. That's only the bit I'm monitoring. And meanwhile, they're throwing this money to businesses which are inefficient. They're throwing it to ones that are inefficient. We can't understand how green cut renewables is surviving, and we can't understand, they are mentioning contracts for differences. That's where you can buy shares now and pay for them in a year, and it looks very like the ECB is guaranteeing these. So this is what Sean Quinn fell on. He engaged in contracts for differences. And when the market fell, he was caught. Well, it looks like our taxpayers, through the ECB and through inflation and printing money, are guaranteeing those. I'm not sure that there's a big inquiry on into that, and there's nothing journalistically wrong with me speculating a bit to get the interest in it. And as we go along, then we begin to solve these type of things. So the very last slide now I'm going to show you, and then we'll pick up again once I give the battery a bit of a charge, is open and free economy. The treaties say that Europe has to be an open and free economy. Please remember that, repeat it in your head. That's what the treaties say. It's not a dictatorship, it's not a communist state, it's an open and free economy. That's what the EU is meant to be. And there's meant to be no government protection. And in years and years gone by, there'd be some company getting into trouble, and in it stepped the government. It had to do it with insurance. I think it was the Insurance Corporation of Ireland. Otherwise, people would have no insurance. But regularly we see this, and we're seeing it with Bord na Móna now, and it's justified and allowed because they're saying it's due to emissions, carbon emissions. But Bord na Móna, well, I suppose if they stop them cutting turf, it might be allowed to give them some subsidy. But this is what governments naturally do. They protect their industries when they're collapsing, because these industries have voters. And the EU's policy is no, you let them go to the wall and something new will start up. And that's what started off Ryanair. Before Ryanair, Aer Lingus was running the show, and you'd get a big napkin going in, and you'd get a lovely meal, and you'd get all, but you'd pay about €500 to go to England. And Ryanair killed all that and give you a ticket for €20. And that is an effect of this type of a policy, which probably would never come in on its own by the Irish people's own vote, because the Irish people wouldn't even know how to vote in relation to it. So that's a very clear example. The EU prohibits that in principle. And as a result, it's meant to promote inefficiency. But the problem is they're pushing this old green stuff, they're pushing trade away, they have no apprenticeships, they have nothing to encourage the making of things. We have a couple of great companies that I know of. We have Moffat's up in Clontibbert making lifting equipment. We have Power Screen, we have Malone Engineering, and we have McHale, the people who make the balers. That's in my sector. There is a few good things, and when people got stuck, I think it was a mile underground over in South America, it was an Irish company in Clare that made the drill to drill down to get them out. I mean, there's some great things there. But generally speaking, the EU is not up to scratch. It's not building ships, it's not building machine tools, it's not building much. It builds a few cars, and they can't even do that right. So that they're not up to the industrial aspect of it, and as a result, there's not enough money being created in the economies to keep the economies going. So that's where we leave off, folks. I'll be coming back now in a few minutes, I think, when I give the battery a charge, with another video on this series. And I just ask you again, please, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't like it, then give it a thumbs down. And that's a bit of encouragement. And we'll move on now, and we'll let you go at that. So thank you very much.